Hello, everyone. My name is Trevor Perry, and this is for the history class of historical theory. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to study history, a step-by-step process. Well, here's the main steps of basically just studying history. It is the historiography. What is historiography? Well, it's basically just the study of history, and really, it's writing. Then we could be broken down into further sources, analyze our sources, and then we need to synthesize our information, and then how we're going to present that information to our reader to perform that, we are an unbiased person in the whatever topic we are researching. This could be used the historian's toolbox. Well, what is really the historian's toolbox? Well, the historian's toolbox is a variety of techniques used to break down and understand a topic. These topics can realistically include the fields of history, diversity of perspectives, lenses of history, citations and annotated footnotes, types and diversity of sources, narrative and argumentative writing, hypothesis and thesis, which is further broken down into research questions and arguments, neutrality, causations, and interpretations. All these put together will help us get a very strong argument and help us understand the information for which we are researching and writing about. So how are we going to analyze these sources? Starting with the fields of history and lenses of history. Both of these kind of go together to give us a general overview of what that historian is really talking about and basically help us diverge into separate categories. So what is the fields of history? This is simply the category of history a historiographer is researching. What these categories can include basically women's history, history of science, history of arts, military history, environmental history, and ethnohistory. All these really put together break down the essence of what we are really researching, and it basically allows us to break down the information that we're looking at. Furthering on to the lenses of history, this is how someone interprets events. This can be broken down into two parts: understanding events by analogy, and then actually understanding the events from facts and information. So what's an example of understanding events by analogy? Basically, people are always looking to solidify or look to their events from the past, and they will use analogies. So, like a perfect example would be the new conservative movement of the Trump era, basically being reaction to the Obama administration, and using that, looking back to the Ronald Reagan administration and the people revolting against Jimmy Carter, because during those times, both the economy was kind of struggling, not nearly as bad as it was back in the Reagan era, but the economy was struggling. People were upset about Iranian revolution and the hostages over there. And basically, this allowed people just always looking to go back and give an analogy of what's currently going on. And then understanding facts and information, basically understanding the actual information that is a cause of the event. So looking at, for example, going back to the Trump analogy, would be people are basically political scientists looking at actual poll information and all the other little nuances that made Trump win that election and everything that it would stand for. So the lenses of history and fields of history are used together in fields and lenses to help break down a topic. Basically take a big chunk and break it down into a lot of smaller chunks. The next tool is causations. So what is a causation? What's important? A causation used with fields and lenses help further understand a topic. Causations are broken down into two parts. So it's important before we break these down into two parts. The causations is the overview of an event and then why an event happened. So basically that has been broken down to necessary causations and sufficient causations. So what's really the difference between the two and why are kind of they important? Well, a necessary causation is if an action X is necessary cause of Y, then any sort of presence of Y necessarily implies the prior occurrence of X. However, with the presence of X does not imply that Y will occur. Basically, it's just giving us a timeline of what's really going on. An example is World War II and the dropping of the atomic bomb in Japan. the war between the United States and Japan is X and the bomb is Y. That means the war between the United States and Japan is a necessary causation for the bomb to Y. So the bomb basically is really uh, the presence, any presence of the bomb being dropped implies that the occurrence of um, the bomb basically, that there was a war between Japan and the United States. Moving on to sufficient causation. So what is a sufficient causation? A sufficient causation is if action X is a sufficient cause of Y, then the presence of X implies the subsequent occurrence of Y. However, another cause of Z may alternatively cause Y. Therefore, the presence of Y does not imply the prior occurrence of X. So basically, an example would be the U.S.-Mexican War over some territory. Basically, the U.S. troops sent the territorial line to Unicus River. The presence of this would be a state for another Y, basically. So going on, synthesize this information, the hypothesis and thesis, research questions, and arguments. So why is it important to have a good research question? Well, for one, it helps you to know your reader's specific subject matter you will be addressing within a broad topic. It just helps us understand what you really are talking about and why you're talking about it. So how do you find a good research project, or how do you come up with one? It just basically could be broken down into three parts. Really, you can look at current events or timely issues. Basically, just looking at, you can look at, a good one would be like looking at the political atmosphere of what's really going on right now. And then consider the research you've already done. And so basically, like, I did a lot of research for this class on the dropping of the atomic bomb. And basically, I would do a lot of research and argument questions based off the cause. The bomb being dropped was also probably a part of the cause of the Cold War. So that would be something I would want to talk about. And then lastly, something that involves your own interests are great resources to find a topic. Continuing on to narrative and argumentative writing, it is important to understand that historiographers are always trying to get a point across or give you a narrative. When reading, it is important to separate facts and that of interpretations. This will help you understand if the author is trying to get a point across or just being basically a neutral party, which is very important, and we'll discuss the differences in here. So with facts as facts, it's basically just a statement of fact, literally just giving you information without interpretation. So basically saying, the Holocaust, so many people died. But an interpretation of that would be the Holocaust was a brutal, brutal ploy by the Nazis to segregate and basically create the Aryan race. That would be my interpretation of the Holocaust. And then the neutral party. You don't want someone giving you an essay that isn't neutral. For example, on the US and Japan war and the dropping of the bomb on Japan, you're not going to go looking for someone in Japan that is trying to basically, if you're looking for information on the bomb was a good idea, you're not going to go to Japan and look at that. You're going to look for someone as an outside neutral party on writing and discussing, because they're going to have more of a neutral point of view. So citations and footnotes. These are important because why are they important? Well, for one, it helps your reader understand where you got your information from. It's important. Everyone needs to know. Basically, so they don't know you're not plagiarizing. So footnotes and citations. So basically, what is a footnote and what is an endnote? Well, footnote is to help, and an endnote is to help acknowledge an influencer, to give further information about something to the author wants to state, or to present further sources, or to have a more in-depth discussion, basically a continuation of information that you've already talked about. Another use of citations would be a bibliography. Basically, it's just a bibliographic essay. It's a reference list and annotated bibliography. So basically, you have your types of sources in the sense of you have your primary and your secondary sources. Primary sources being, letters of actual people that were involved and so forth, and secondary sources being other information. This is where you would put it all in this area, and it would help you understand what is going on in your essay. Basically, also to show, you're not plagiarizing and taking other people's work as your own. In conclusion, using all the following tools, you should be able to dissect and understand information that will help you become a historiographer. It is important to use all these tools to help us further our information and help us really dissect and understand the topic that we are talking about. It allows us to give an in-depth and also an educational viewpoint on our information. Thank you for a great semester and have a great rest of your day.